When we refer to genre, we refer to a way of classifying plays based on the type of story they tell. A genre is basically a result of the conventions of the time. And with this, I mean that it's a result of how theater was done at the time, of how plays tended to be structured and created at the time. So, for instance, if we think about Greek tragedy in ancient Greece, the hero, the protagonist, was usually somebody of prominence, somebody with a higher social rank, a king, a queen, princess, a nobleman. While the more contemporary genre, domestic tragedy, uses ordinary people as its protagonists, common people. So it's more usual to see that. Also, it's relevant to mention that tragedy and comedy are considered to be foundational genres. And this is because most of the other genres are just a variation of these two. So they basically evolve from these two categories. So, however, each genre is in its own way a genre, but others may be classified as subgenres. So, for instance, if we think of comedy and these subgenres, all these four categories will make you laugh in different ways. So they make comedy in different ways. However, they all have the purpose of exposing the silliness of human behavior and of society. Another aspect of genre is that because playwriting is an art and it is subjective, most of the time a play will not fit exactly into a particular genre, and sometimes it can even fall into two or more genres. So let's have a closer look at these four categories. Okay, so tragedy. The dynamic of tragedy is a serious narrative, a serious story with a sad ending. And the main concern of tragedies is to explore what it means to be human, is to try and answer questions like, is the world unfair, unjust? Are we to endure suffering in order to grow as people, as persons, as human beings? To what level of determination and integrity can human beings rise? Also, another important function of tragedy is to create catharsis. This is the purge of negative emotions. So usually when we're watching a tragedy, we tend to cry or feel pity for the protagonist. And this is because tragedy has the ability to create high engagement in the audience. So we engage, we empathize with the protagonist to such an extent that we let out our own emotions. And this is considered to be a very healthy psychological practice. Another aspect of tragedy is the protagonist. So as mentioned before, it's usually a noble hero. And in traditional tragedies, this hero would be somebody of high rank, of high social status, a king, a princess, a nobleman. And so the protagonist will show a human imperfection, usually arrogance or pride. And this human imperfection is what, in most of the tragedies, will create tragic circumstances. So these are a situation, a circumstance where there's no apparent escape, no way of getting out of it. So what is coming is coming. So, and at some point, the hero identifies in himself this tragic flaw or realizes he has done wrong somehow, and he's willing to suffer because of this. So, for example, if we think about Romeo and Juliet, the heroes they have as a main tragic flaw impulsivity, which is a very common flaw in teenagers. So, and their circumstances, of course, they were they fall in love with each other in the middle of a family feud. being each one from the conflicting families. But then, because of the tragic flaw of impulsivity, at some point, Romeo kills Tybalt in rage. And from this point on, there is no return. And in this particular play, there is a willingness to suffer because of their loyalty to one another, and that is that they rather be dead than be apart. Also, as mentioned before, we have traditional tragedy and we have modern tragedy. So traditional tragedy was a highlight in ancient Greece, in Renaissance England, and in France. And while modern tragedy is more contemporary. And I would say the key difference in this sort of plays is not only the dialogue form, which was verse, mainly verse in traditional tragedy and prose in modern one, but also the type of hero. So as mentioned before, in traditional tragedy, the hero will be somebody of high rank, while the heroes in modern tragedies, contemporary tragedies, are ordinary people.